This is the Inner Peacemaker Parent Podcast, which is all about Christ-centered self-care. My name is Cassandra Kimball, and this is episode 10. That part of me is still healing. When I went to my girls' back to school night this past fall, I spent some time looking around the new room that my second grade daughter would be coming to school each day in, and we found out that her teacher, she has a lot of a teaching experience, but it had been a little while since she's been over a classroom. So she didn't have very many things on the wall yet. And I did notice a beautiful painting, a watercolor on one of her walls. And and the other thing that stood out to me was a very large, almost abnormally large hand-drawn sign on a big piece of paper. I can see it on the wall in my head. And it just has three letters on it. It's all in caps, and it had the word yet. I didn't think much of that sign. I didn't think much about it until I later looked over the teacher's syllabus for the year and different things that I need to know as a parent. And she included a paragraph about that word and why she put it on her wall. She didn't say why she put it on her wall, but I connected this is a focus to her. Because in the syllabus, she talked about her desire to focus on ingraining that word, that idea into her students, that if they didn't understand a new concept, they simply didn't know it yet, right? If they haven't mastered a math skill, they just haven't mastered it yet. They didn't know all the spelling words yet, right? I think that's such a hopeful and supportive way to approach education, approach anything. And yeah, we're going to be using that in this episode. I just thought it was great that her teacher helped remind me of something really good to focus on. Um, that same daughter, the second grader, she wanted to learn piano. And I remember one day soon after, reading the syllabus and thinking about that sign in her classroom. I remember this daughter was sitting at the piano and she was just so frustrated. She is my hot to cold girl and she gets really big feelings fast. And she was just so frustrated at herself for not being able to play a specific song, well yet, right? She just kept making mistakes. It was feeling hard to her. And I remember using her teacher's word to remind her that this is a new thing and it might take some time and probably longer than she was thinking, right? Um, and I can see how this can compare to not just my sweet daughter in her class, but how this can compare in my own life. I was thinking about how long it might take to heal from certain addictions or certain weaknesses, certain issues or seasons of life that we may be going through. Um, that it might be taking longer than you think it was going to take. I was just thinking of in my own life, I'm like, it took longer than I thought it would for my experienced stepdad to find another job. It took longer than I thought for myself to get and then stay pregnant. It took longer than I thought to overcome my addiction to sugar and then have to overcome it and go through it again. And it took longer than I thought to deal with being nauseated and throwing up during pregnancy than I thought. I thought, oh, it's just going to be the beginning. It just took longer than I thought. So, and it took longer than I thought it would to lose some weight on my body. And it took longer than I thought to learn how to love myself, how to cook, how to um, grocery shop in a way that was good. I just so many different things, right? Like how to talk to certain members of my extended family, just longer than I would think. And I was also thinking of how long it took for me to heal from a simple surgery that I did this past year, it was last year. And this sweet 80-year-old lady in my ward had the exact same operation, the exact same spot in her body. And she bounced back. She said, "It took me 10 days, but I got back." And she didn't know, but for me, it took over a month. And so that I was a baby about healing from that same surgery. So, right? It just, some things take longer than we plan on. And anyway, those are just a few examples from my life of things taking longer than I thought they would. Naaman comes to mind, right? In Second Kings, Naaman just he believed enough to travel a long way to visit a prophet who he had been told, Naaman had been told about the ability for this prophet to heal him. And his initial response is so interesting to me and so understandable. I can be so kind in his response, but because I too have like I have a plan at times. I envision how certain things are going to play out. Believing in God and just wondering though about the timing and the way like I could be healed or get blessed, right? Second Kings 5:11 says this about Naaman, this well-known great captain in the Syrian army, right? When he found out what the prophet instructed him to do, it says this. But Naaman was wroth and went away and said, "Behold, I thought," there's that word, "behold, I thought he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper." I so he turned and went away in rage. Isn't this so interesting? And it talks about how he just believed that there were other rivers that were better than that. So he's like he just went away in rage. It's so interesting, right? Those were from his thoughts, those big feelings, the rage. What else does it say? Wrath. So right, the same kind of thing, rage. I just remember thinking how we know our feelings come from our thoughts. So Naaman, he imagined or thought that the prophet would come out and perform a grand miracle, right? In this certain way. So there's no judgment from me in this. I get it. Um, right. Going back to thinking of my daughter doing those piano lessons, and she was just so sad. She wasn't able to get her fingers to do the things that she wanted to fast enough, right? Is what she thought in her head of the timetable she thought. Um, of things just not happening yet, right? I also thought of like Brad Wilcox. He says something so well. He's just such a good speaker. And in one of the, I was rereading, I listened to and then reread one of his talks that he had in general conference and was reading some of the footnotes, just really great scriptures and quotes he gave, but just want to read a few of them. He reminded me of Moroni 6:8, and it says, "But as oft as they repented and sought forgiveness with real intent, they were forgiven." Now, remember, I'm bringing this up because sometimes if we're thinking like of an addiction, for example, that we may have in our life, we're thinking as oft as they repented and sought forgiveness with real intent, they were forgiven. As often as that needs to happen in our lives, right? Or another one in Mosiah. Yea, and as often as my people repent, will I forgive them their trespasses against me. Right? Here's two different places in the Book of Mormon talking about this. Um, then he quotes Elder Bruce C. Hafen, who said that developing a Christ-like character requires patience and persistence more than it requires flawlessness. I just think that's such a good reminder. Um, it's such a good reminder to me. I've just been surprised that I've um, been a little frustrated at some of my weaknesses lately. And so, yeah, I just want to remember a little more patience, a little more persistent. Like, I'm going to keep trying, I'm going to keep doing this. And he uses this quote. Remember, all these are from Brad Wilcox. He's just reading these scriptures. And this is a quote from Elder Richard G. Scott when he said, "When the Lord speaks of weaknesses, it is always with mercy." When I read that, I wondered, I'm like, do I speak of my weakness and my weaknesses with mercy? Do Do I speak about them with mercy? Do I speak to myself with mercy? And I'm all about like helping us look at our thoughts, because our thoughts affect how we feel, and how we feel affects our actions, which affects the results or outcome of our life, right? So our thoughts are so important, and they're so much fun to work on. It's just, to me, it's just work worth doing. Um, I did want to share, Brad Wilcox shares about this young man who has a pornography addiction. And I'm going to jump around a bit in the talk, but here's some key things about this story that I thought were supportive to my mind and heart today. So, he said, some mistakenly receive the message that God is waiting to help until after we repent, after we're all clean, right? God's message, he says, God's message is that he will help us as we repent, right? I've talked about that before, of how I believe God is there. He wants to come in into the mess, right? He doesn't come over to your house and like, you're like, I've got to clean up before you come in, right? As we sometimes do for house guests. I just really believe that he wants to come in with you and just come into the mess and right as you are. And he's like, I'm going to help you clean up, right? I'm going to help you to feel clean and pure. And I'm going to help you in the mess. I'm going to help you in the addiction. I'm going to help you with the hard stuff. That to me is why, um, I just want I just want to emphasize that point, is that I just believe he wants to come into the mess as we repent, as Elder um, our brother Wilcox talks about. Okay, so going back to that story. He said, one young man I'll call Damon wrote, growing up, I struggled with pornography. I always felt so ashamed that I could not get things right. And he goes on to say, each time Damon slipped, the pain of regret became so intense. He harshly judged himself to be unworthy of any kind of grace, forgiveness, or additional chances from God, right? So he feels like he's unworthy of it, right? Damon said, I figured God probably hated me because I wasn't willing to work harder. That's sometimes how I feel. I'm like, I'm just not working hard enough, I bet. Because I wasn't willing to work harder and get on top of this once and for all. I'd go a week and sometimes even a month, but then I would relapse and think, I'll never be good enough. So what's the use of even trying? I'm going to pause again real quick just to say I've totally experienced those feelings. I call her pointless penny inside of me. It is a very real feeling. So, and maybe you've felt that way too before. So, that feeling of like, what's the use of trying? Maybe I should just stop coming to church, he said. I'm sick of being a hypocrite. He had a good leader who responded to him, you're not a hypocrite because you have a bad habit. You you are oh sorry, you're not a hypocrite because you have a bad habit you're trying to break. You're a hypocrite if you hide it or lie about it. Being honest about your actions and taking steps to move forward is not being a hypocrite, it's being a disciple. End quote. Right? Because being a disciple is following Jesus, right? You're pointing in the right direction, even if we're making lots of mistakes, right? You're being a disciple. I just want to reread that quote from Elder Scott. When the Lord speaks of weaknesses, it is always with mercy, right? Do you feel like you have a weakness in your life? Some kind of weakness in your life that you have? When the Lord speaks of weaknesses, it is always with mercy, with mercy. Again, this is just how I want to speak to myself. I want to speak to myself about my weakness, about my weaknesses with mercy, right? Um, One way I've learned to do this is to say to myself, um, was something I'm trying to read what I'm writing. I wrote this kind of rushed. Let's see what I wrote. One way I've learned to speak more mercifully to myself, um, it just comes from a compilation of like a bunch of different mentors I've had, books that I've read, because I was trying to narrow down like who's the exact person that's taught me this. But I can remember like Jody Moore talking about it. I remember Brooke Snow teaching me part of this, Debbie Ford's book, and Brooke Castillo, and then Richard's I can't say his last name. Sorry. He wrote the book No Bad Parts. So that guy. Sorry. I don't know how to say your cool last name. But anyway, I've learned this idea from so many different mentors. So I just wanted to give all of them credit because this does not come from me. Um, but the idea is just to be so kind to every emotion that you feel, right? And when we can say we learned that from um, that we just learned that from Elder Scott too, right? To be so merciful to every weakness that you have inside of you. So the emotions come up sometimes with weakness, right? So we can say we learned that from an apostle too. Um, so yeah, we just want to meet those thoughts with kindness. When I didn't want to keep to my plan of only having 3 bites of a treat, this is an example from today. Because I have this as one of my ideas of like, I have a tall glass of water before I have 3 bites of a treat. And instead of following through that plan tonight, I inhaled 2 humongous bowls of Fruit Loop cereal, and it tasted amazing in the moment. And but I could tell I was starting to like internally get upset at myself. Here we go again, kind of attitude. Like I was starting to feel that way. And I had to like intentionally, still takes effort inside of me to intentionally try to be more Christ-like, right? To be show mercy, more love and compassion to myself. It's not to give up or just be like, yeah, just show love and never have to try or change. That's not it at all. But rather, I want to change out of love. I want to give myself so much grace and be like, hey, what's going on, Cassandra? I see that you're inhaling these Fruit Loops tonight, right? And I just don't want it to come from a place of anger towards myself or frustration or like giving up or like, well, forget it, right? I don't want to be frustrated in the pace of my healing, my internal healing. Like Naaman, who was frustrated, right? He was frustrated at the way and the pace, like the timing, right? That he was being healed. And his body could heal, just like I know my body can heal. If not in this life, in the next, I know it can. But I've decided that I'm going to heal. I'm going to go through this process with lots of kindness. And there's this good reminder to do this episode, a little more patience in the timing and way that it's going to happen. I've reminded myself of a mantra when something like binge eating sugar, which soon after does not feel good at all, but in the moment it feels good. But I still do it at times, and I love how this one mantra feels when I say, that part of me is still healing. That part of me is still healing. Still healing, right? It's reminding me of my 5-year-old who sometimes takes off her band-aids too early, or like they fall off in the bathtub or whatever, right? Like before they're fully healed. Kind of reminds me of this in the same way. That part of me is not fully healed yet. Like, you still need that band-aid on there. It's not healed yet. Like I guess I still have some drama and some things that I need to work through because I can tell I'm trying to use sugar to buffer some big feelings. And when I was still with them for today, I realized that I felt a little guilty for not going to a reception, a wedding reception with my husband tonight. I was feeling a little guilty of that. So it's just interesting. When they left, as soon as he left, I binged those 2 bowls of cereal. So I'm just going to show so much kindness to myself. I'm like, that's so interesting. I felt so bad that I didn't go. Um, so it's so good. I love that I can be still long enough and open that up and realize my emotions are just those compassionate alarm clocks, right? So I haven't quite figured it all out yet. And part of me is still healing. Oh, I love that I used the word yet. I haven't quite figured it all out yet. And there's a part of me that is still healing. But this is work worth doing. That's my other suggestion for you is to simply incorporate the word from my daughter's classroom of yet, right? It fills me with hope. Um, and even that part of this is work worth doing. I learned that from Jody Moore. Um, so yeah, this is work worth doing. If it's something that you really do want to overcome, if it's something that you really want to work through, this is work worth doing. I hope you will be able to continue moving forward with genuine moments of like really feeling a little more hope, even though there may be parts of you that are still healing. That bad habit that you haven't yet broken, or something that you do that you just feel stuck in, you may not be healed in the timing or the way that you think you'll be healed. But I bet in the big picture, you're going to look back, it will be even better way and timing than you can imagine. Naaman was healed, and I know you too can be healed. And until that time, you and I can continue in patience and kindness towards ourselves. There's just different things I'm thinking of. Like, I thought all that practice during my mission, I thought all that practice talking with strangers and teaching lessons would get all my awkwardness out of me. Awkwardness of like teaching the gospel and talking to people. But no, it's still a thing. It's still a part of me that's still healing. And I thought after my goal one year, a few years ago, I had this goal. I'm like, I'm going to coach 100 people, just one-on-one sessions. And in my head, I just imagined after 100 that I would no longer be nervous. I remember a number 100 and I was still nervous. And I've come to love nervousness because I know that um, that part of me wants to prepare like the best thoughts for that person that I'm going to coach. And so I've come to love nervousness being part of me. Um, but anyway, yeah. And just different things in my life, right? I'm just thinking through in this lesson. I'm like, that is a part of me that is still healing. And it's a good thing we know a master healer who is always, always available to you and to me. That is a part of me that is still healing. I hope you try it out if you want. I hope you try it out and you just see how it feels, right? I always want people to just experiment. And if it doesn't feel good to you, don't use it. No worries. Um, I love that you can also use the word yet, right? Like, I just haven't learned it yet. I haven't mastered that yet. Um, and also that other phrase, what did I say? It's work worth doing. That's what it was. That this is work worth doing, right? Whatever, maybe one of those could resonate with you, but just remember that his arm of mercy is always extended towards you, right? We read that in 3 Nephi 9. His arm of mercy is always extended towards you. So let's extend that same mercy and kindness to ourselves, right? God does. So we can learn to do that as well. You got this. Take care, internal peacemaker.